It's me, Kirby. It is my 33rd birthday, friends. Time to talk about my best games across a variety of different systems. Ha 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 ha! Here to detail this information is prolific YouTuber personality, Onion Creature.
Hello there, it is me. I am here to talk Kirby. Well, it's finally time. As a Kirby channel, I feel it an obligation to go through all of the Kirby video games and rank them. This channel's been going on since about 2017, and before this point I haven't gone through and ranked the Kirby games from worst to best, which is something that, I think it would be a fun thing to do. Share my thoughts with the world on how each Kirby game relates to each other in terms of quality. That should be a grand time. I guess a few things to note is that this is ranking the Kirby series game releases from 1992 to April of 2025, so we are missing out on whatever future titles might be releasing, perhaps even this year, like the new Switch 2 version of Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Kirby Air Riders by Masahiro Sakurai. Would love to include those, but of course I have not played them, and so they will not be on the list. So that's about the limits of it. I am not a time traveler, sadly, so can't play those games. Okay, with that delightful prelude done with, let's jump in to our last game on the list. I think there's going to be a few controversial takes in here, so if I put your favorite game further down the list than you might like, just know that I do really enjoy all of the Kirby games in some capacity, even if they aren't my favorite. It's been said many a time, and it's a fact I hold true, that there is no such thing as a bad Kirby game. That's reflected in this list. Although some of the games are lower down in the ranking, it does not mean they're bad. It just means they're not my personal favorites. I gotta say, this was a tricky list to come up with. I am providing a true and valuable service to society with this list, so I do hope you enjoy it. Kirby Fighters Deluxe. This is another expanded subgame, this one from Kirby Triple Deluxe. This one was not free to play, it's just a flat, I think, $7 rate. It's a good one. The multiplayer is pretty fun, only local multiplayer. This came out before Smash 3DS, so while you were waiting to play Smash 3DS, I guess you could boot this one up. It's a little similar to Smash Bros. In ways. It has items and chaos and all sorts of nonsense. Okay single-player content, decent amount of stages, stage variety, could be better, but yeah, it's fine. Yeah, so that's Kirby Fighters Deluxe. Kirby Battle Royale. Oh man. So Kirby Battle Royale is definitely just all around one of the most forgettable Kirby titles, which is probably why it's at this place. There's quite a few things I enjoy. I like that a lot of the mini-games take place in 3D. It was our first chance to really play around with some of these abilities in 3D, and it brought back some fun abilities, like Mirror was added in DLC, as was Sleep. And this was the first time we got a moveset for Sleep, like a proper moveset. So it was cool. I think the issue with this game is just the structure. It's a multiplayer party game, but it only has about 10 mini-games. Those mini-games do have variants of each other, but it gets pretty repetitive pretty fast and just isn't standout in that many ways. It had an online mode, which is no longer accessible. Thank you for shutting down the servers, Nintendo. But even when it was online, it was pretty tricky to find a match because not that many people were playing online, and when you could, my experience was that it was pretty lackluster in terms of performance. So oops. But, the presentation is nice. The characters have the bold black outlines. It has a comic book aesthetic. Kind of nice. Soundtrack is good. The campaign mode is fine. Like the multiplayer, it's also very repetitive, though. But it does have a pretty nice final boss against DDD. So I do have positive things to say about this game. I think I'm softer on it than some other people might be. Another highlight I have to mention is the different costumes that you can unlock for the different abilities and characters. My favorite has to be the Box Boy costume, which is only unlockable via the Box Boy amiibo, which I am lucky enough to own. I'm thankful that I decided to pick that up when it was still relatively affordable. There's no way to unlock this other than amiibo or hacking, I guess, if you are into that, which is kind of unfortunate, actually. So this is a piece of Kirby history that's kind of lost to time unless you have that amiibo. Not great. The costume itself, man, that's pretty sick to have a QB costume in a Kirby game. That doesn't happen too often, so you gotta appreciate it. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. Yeah, so it's actually one of the first Kirby games I played, and even back then I'm like, yeah, this is definitely good, but it's not really giving me all that much value as an experience compared to the other titles. It's a remake of Kirby's Adventure for the GBA, and it does have some things going for it. It has updated music, visuals, mini-games, so that's pretty cool. The issue, I think, is just in general, it has far less charm than the original Kirby's Adventure did on NES. I mean, of course, it does run better because it's not running on an NES, it's running on a Game Boy Advance. That's an improvement, I guess, yeah. And it does add multiplayer as well as a Meta Knight mode when you beat the game. I can appreciate that. I think just the issue is that I find it less charming than Kirby's Adventure. I think the art design took a hit in the transition, and it just has a lot less character and charm to the environments and pixel art. The music as well, I wouldn't say is a lateral improvement either. It's still very good, still based on the same compositions, just not as charming to me. These lower games on the list are more here because they're just more forgettable. Not that they're bad, that's just how it goes. Kirby's Dream Course. This is maybe one of my more controversial entries to have lower on the list. I like this game a lot. Actually, I'll have you know. My issue with it is that I basically only played it in single player. I don't think I've ever really attempted multiplayer, which I should do at some point. But until that time, this is where it's going to be, because as a single player experience, I find it to be far too finicky and demanding. It's one of the first Kirby spin-offs. I think the first Kirby game on SNES. I do like a lot of the mechanics. I like the isometric view. The core gameplay loop is good. I just find that it becomes really finicky very quickly and far too precise. It's definitely a factor is that I'm just not very good at it. But even still, there's a lot to like. Music is great. Music's absolutely phenomenal. I love the way the SNES Kirby games sound. This one is no exception. For me, as someone who has only played it as a purely single-player experience, it just doesn't work as well for me. Team Kirby Clash Deluxe. So this is one of the 3DS download exclusive titles, which I guess is no longer really available or playable unless you already downloaded it. I quite like this. It's the first free-to-play Kirby game that made a lot of people mad or upset. Personally, I was more accepting of it. I would prefer a Kirby game not be free-to-play, but if it's going to be, this is a structure that I don't personally hate that much. Essentially, you can play the whole game for free. There's a apple tree that you can upgrade by purchasing gem apples from Magalore. The game just basically requires a lot less grinding and becomes more fun. And it does max out at a certain point, and it says, okay, well, you've bought enough gem apples, so now you don't have to pay anymore. The tree will not be upgraded anymore. So that's actually a very nice feature, and make it so that like kids aren't spending thousands of dollars on this, which would be, not ideal. I suppose a lot of modern games could learn from that, but perhaps wouldn't be as profitable, so I suppose that's why they haven't. Thank you guys. Cool. The structure is essentially you're just fighting a lot of different Kirby bosses. It's an expanded version of the Kirby Planet Robobot subgame, and it's themed around RPGs. People always say they want a Kirby RPG. This isn't exactly that, but it certainly is styled after one. So you have the different classes, the Sword Fighter, Hammer, Mage, what's the other guy? Doctor. They have Doctor in this as the healer. Yeah. So I like the structure. I think it's expanded well from the subgame. The free-to-play structure does make it take a hit in the ranking, probably. It's definitely a good time. Some of the final bosses are very cool. It's pretty dang nice. Kirby Squeak Squad. So now we're getting to more perhaps spicy takes. I like Kirby Squeak Squad. It's perfectly fine, and that's about all it is. Very forgettable. It's definitely not last in my ranking, but there's not much that sticks out about it. I like the Squeaks, the character design of that team. Daroach is a really fun character. It has limited ability mixing brought back from Kirby 64. You mix the abilities in Kirby's mouth on the touchscreen. Kind of a fun mechanic, but it doesn't add that much. The thing about it is I just don't have much to say about it, so I guess we'll just move on. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. This is a different sort of lower ranking game in that it's actually pretty unique and has a lot of great ideas. It's just the execution of those ideas is lacking. This is basically a Kirby Metroidvania, which is essentially the only one of those that has ever really been made. And it's good. It has a multiplayer focus where you got multiple Kirbys running around, and they can be either computer controlled or player controlled. You know, the idea of having a Kirby Metroidvania is very cool. It's just the execution of it is just, it's serviceable, but I don't think the changes made to the Kirby formula really adapt it that well to this format. It ends up feeling somewhat incomplete and just fine. It's a game with a lot of potential. Doesn't live up to most of that potential, but is still a good time. Kirby's Pinball Land. This is the first Kirby spin-off. I like it a lot. The reason it ranks lower than the other Game Boy Kirby spin-offs is just because it's pretty simplistic and doesn't have that much to do. Still a lot of charm though, great music, but I mean, it's what it says on the tin. It's Kirby Pinball. So what you see is what you get, pretty much. Kirby's Avalanche. Another Kirby spin-off, and this is essentially just a reskin of Puyo Puyo, the Sega game, which you also might know as Mean Bean Machine. It's Puyo Puyo. If you like Puyo Puyo, you will like this. It does have weird voice clips to introduce the characters, like this.
Squishy, even more.
Kirby is he's a bit of a bastard in this one. They did not have Kirby's characterization locked down fully at this point in time, so he's a bit of a loose cannon. I like Puyo Puyo. Played a lot of Mean Bean Machine back in the day, but it's just not a game I'm prone to revisit all that much. Kirby Fighters 2. Kirby Fighters 2 was released on the Nintendo Switch in 2020. It's a sequel to the original Kirby Fighters Deluxe, and has a lot more content. You got a lot more characters, like Gooey. Hey Gooey, how's it going, Goo? And yeah, it's built off Kirby Star Allies, but it is 60 FPS, so that was pretty fun, because both Super Kirby Clash and Kirby Star Allies before it were 30 FPS. But it also included the new ability Wrestler, which has not appeared since. It's exclusive to this title currently, which is kind of crazy, but yeah, it's a fun ability. And I think what pushes this one over the edge is that it has a very decent single-player mode, where it's a sort of roguelite-esque, where you have this tower that you climb, and you get different power-ups and abilities, and if you die, you lose them all and have to restart. It has a fun final boss, online multiplayer, which did not work great, but was there. I mean, you could still technically use it, but I don't think anyone's online, sadly. That happens with all these Kirby titles. It's a real shame. The online community dies off within like weeks. It's sad. Quite like this. The main theme is very good as well. Super Kirby Clash. This is an expanded version of Team Kirby Clash Deluxe. It's pretty similar, it just has a wider scope. It's built off Kirby Star Allies, and it includes the first lyrical track to be included in one of the games. That was fun. Underneath the big green tree. That's where we'll gather, you and me. This one had online multiplayer as well, which could get pretty laggy, but was cool it was there. Kirby Canvas Curse. This game takes advantage of the DS touchscreen, where you draw a rainbow line with a paintbrush for Kirby to ride along. He's a ball. I like this game. I think it does struggle to have too much of its own identity, just because a lot of the music tracks are remixes, and I think some of the sprites are also reused from some of the Game Boy Advance games. Although I will say the UI does stand out. The UI is pretty cool. There's some fun environments. It also features abilities. Kind of a more middle-of-the-road spin-off for me, but still pretty cool. Kirby Tilt in Tumble. This game is pretty ahead of its time in that it used a gyroscope in the cartridge. I actually played this a couple years back on original Game Boy hardware. I had gotten the cartridge on eBay, but kind of realized it was sort of impossible to play on a Game Boy Advance because the cartridge is upside down compared to where it would be on a regular Game Boy. I then did eventually get a Game Boy Color and was able to play it on that, which worked really well. The controls aren't the easiest to get a handle on, but once you do, it's perfectly playable. And, I think Kirby is a really good fit for these experimental titles that he's done quite a lot in the past. Not as much in the present day. A lot of Kirby's more modern spin-offs have not been as experimental as they were back in the 2000s and 90s. But, things change, and I wouldn't rule out some of these more wacky Kirby spin-offs coming back and perhaps taking advantage of some Switch 2 features. That would be fun.
Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards.
Kirby 64, I think, has a lot of charm. Visually, it's one of the best looking Nintendo 64 games. I like a lot of the art design and world design. The cutscenes are really charming, and the music is great, actually. This game has a really tremendous soundtrack. It has this really awesome ability mixing mechanic, which is a lot of fun to mess around with. The problem is Kirby is just so damn slow. He moves at a snail's pace, and it makes it a bit of a chore to play sometimes. So while the ability mixing is great, once you've seen all of the combinations, it does lose its luster a bit, because actually using the abilities, they're basically all one-button abilities like Kirby abilities used to be. They're not as complex as something in, say, Kirby Superstar or Kirby Star Allies or Kirby's Return to Dreamland, those kind of games. They're pretty repetitive to actually use. That does make replaying it not quite as fun as some other Kirby titles. And also unlocking the final boss, which I have to say this game does have one of the best final bosses of the whole series. But actually unlocking it is a bit of a chore. Some of the challenges you have to do are pretty obtuse and not the most fun. And there's also some good 4-player mini games in there just thrown in. But it's decent, man. I like it a lot.
Kirby's Block Ball.
This is another Game Boy spin-off. It's essentially a Kirby version of Breakout, where you go through different levels and break all of the blocks in those levels. I just really like the way this game controls. It has different abilities. One of the all-time great Game Boy Kirby soundtracks. It's finally gotten referenced in modern Kirby games recently, with a game coming up soon, actually, in the ranking. Probably the biggest flaw with this game is that unlocking the final boss is a bit tricky, but on the other hand, that's kind of nice because it does give it more replayability and does add to the challenge. I'm a big block ball proponent. It's a fun time, quite unique in the series. Kirby's Dream Buffet. This game was released in 2022, same year as Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It is pretty delightful, actually. It's a multiplayer-focused Kirby game, and it's kind of a racing game. You go through these food-themed courses. At the end of the race, there's a big pile of strawberries. Then you go to different mini-games where you're fighting over strawberries and trying to knock out the other players. And Kirby is a ball in this and gets gradually fatter the more strawberries you eat, which is just a fun effect. Visually, I think this game looks tremendous. The online did die off pretty fast, so pretty hard to find a match nowadays, unless you're doing, I guess, with just friends. Random matchmaking, pretty dead at this point. There's actually quite a few things to unlock in it as well.
Kirby's Blowout Blast.
This game is kind of a precursor to Kirby and the Forgotten Land in that it translates the classic Kirby formula into a 3D setting. It's basically a 3D remake of the original Kirby's Dream Land. You go through the different levels. It's an expanded version of the Planet Robobot subgame, and it's pretty high score based in that you're trying to combo together inhaling and spitting out. And it does take Kirby back to its roots in that you are just inhaling and spitting out enemies like the original Kirby's Dream Land, no abilities to be found. It's a reminder that that core gameplay loop is actually still very fun and can be reimagined in a modern game quite effectively. Also, a really good soundtrack. It has some tracks that go pretty insane.
DDD's Drum Dash Deluxe.
I believe this is the highest ranking of any of the 3DS download titles. This is basically the only Kirby rhythm game, and I actually quite like rhythm games like this, so of course it kind of had to place high. It's also the only Kirby game not starring Kirby himself. It's just DDD, based again on a subgame from Kirby Triple Deluxe. This one you take control of King Dedede and go through a theme park made by Magalore. A lot of the music is reused from other games, but it does have some great original tracks and remixes. One of the best versions of the song Crowned. I love this version. It's quite fun to listen to. So I think just because of how unique this title is, it's actually fairly replayable. It's going to place pretty high.
Kirby Star Stacker.
This is our Game Boy spin-off. It's essentially a Kirby version of a block stacking game. I've seen a lot of people be big fans of Panel to Pon. Don't see as much discussion of Kirby Star Stacker, which is a shame because it's really good as well. And I believe it's designed by the same person who designed Panel to Pon, but don't really see it in that conversation as much, which is too bad because it's great. You have the standard Kirby Star blocks and then the animal friends, Rick, Kine, and Koo, and you've got to try and match up Rick, Kine, and Koo. It's a pretty classic format, but done super well here. Yeah, just a super fun gameplay loop. I've played hours of this version on 3DS. It's just great. It's got a lot going for it.
Kirby no Kira Kira Kizu.
This is the only game on the list to be Japan exclusive. Technically, it never got localized, but it did see a release on the Nintendo Switch Online app. So you can play it in the US now. That's fun. This is basically just an expanded SNES version of Kirby Star Stacker. There's also a fan translation you could look up if you're interested in that. I will say dialogue isn't really required to enjoy this game, but it does have a short story mode, which features the character Grill. Visually, it's quite an improvement over the Game Boy version, obviously, and the soundtrack is as well. It's super replayable. It's got built-in multiplayer. You can play locally. Just another great version of Kirby Star Stacker. I'd recommend it.
Kirby's Dream Land 3.
I like Kirby's Dream Land 3 a lot. It's definitely one of the most peaceful Kirby games. The visual aesthetic of it is really well refined. It's one of the last SNES titles, and you can kind of tell just with how good it looks. One of the best final bosses as well, though unlocking it can be a bit annoying. I just love the vibe of this game, I guess. Introduces Gooey as your second player option, which is fun.
Kirby's Dream Land 2.
Kirby's Dream Land 2 is the sequel to Kirby's Dream Land, although in terms of its structure, it's probably closer to Kirby's Adventure in that you're going through different levels, and it also includes copy abilities. The big twist of this game is the inclusion of the animal buddies. You got Rick, the hamster, Kine, the sunfish, and Koo, the owl. Each of them adds variation to the different abilities that Kirby gets. So there's basically 4 different versions of each of the abilities in this game, and they're used to solve different puzzles or just give you more movement options. And yeah, I really enjoy this game. I've seen some people online say that getting 100% to unlock the final boss is a bit of a tricky task, which I will admit that it is, but I do also find it quite fun. So that's what I'll say. And man, I keep saying it, but it remains true. Great soundtrack here. All of the animal buddy themes are iconic.
Kirby Star Allies.
Kirby Star Allies at the time was a bit of a disappointment. However, since then, I've come to reevaluate it, especially keeping in mind the free DLC that was added after the fact. But I think even just taking the base game as it is, it's still a strong title, though not one of the best. This game reintroduces an idea that was played around with for Kirby GCN, which is to have 4-player multiplayer with 1 player taking control of Kirby and the other 3 players being helpers, essentially ally versions of the different enemies. The issue is the difficulty doesn't really scale for when you have 4 different characters on screen, whether they're player controlled or computer controlled. And so the game ends up being very easy, especially bosses just go down so fast. It's kind of ridiculous. The game is also 30 FPS, which was kind of disappointing coming after the 3DS and Wii games, which were all 60. Although it does look super good. There's some great looking environments in this one and characters. I also think the music, while good, isn't as good as some of the previous titles that had come out in that decade. But I will say, it has a really freaking great final boss. It's extremely good. And it does have a lot of content. I will say the DLC did improve it pretty dramatically, added a lot more characters, the Dream Friends, a lot of great returning characters from throughout the series. And yeah, this just feels like a great celebration of all of the 2D games that came before it. I just wish that the final product had been a bit more fine-tuned in terms of detail, and that all the best content hadn't been behind a free DLC update later on. Heroes in Another Dimension mode is really great, but it was added quite a lot later. So it's good, but not going to make it to top 10 area. It's flawed, but got quite a few redeeming qualities.
Kirby's Dream Land.
This game is a classic. Perhaps it may seem antiquated in ways, but personally, I think it holds up exceedingly well. This was, of course, the first Kirby title, and it defined the series going forward. Features many staple elements, like Kirby being able to inhale and spit out enemies, King Dedede as the final boss, Waddle Dees, Sir Kibble, many enemies and locations that have since recurred many times throughout the series. It can be beaten very quickly. It's just about 5 stages. It can be beaten about half an hour if you go through it. There's the EX mode, which has a higher level of difficulty and new enemies. And there's also a custom mode you unlock after that. But here's the thing, man. It just holds up. It's fun to replay through. You can do it in one sitting. It's a great introduction to the series. Knocked it out of the park for the concept that Masahiro Sakurai was going for, which was a very approachable video game that just about anyone could play and enjoy. Mission accomplished.
Kirby's Adventure.
This is the NES follow-up to Kirby's Dream Land, and it expands it in quite a few ways. Most notably, it adds copy abilities and has a lot more stages and content in it. Also really good sub-games. With that said, the NES version does have some downsides in that the performance is pretty lackluster. There's just a lot going on. This is a late NES game, so it's quite a bit more advanced than most of the other titles in terms of the amount of things happening on screen, which does come at a cost, and that cost is the game can run poorly at times.
3D Classics. Kirby's Adventure.
So while the NES version does have those flaws, 3D Classics Kirby's Adventure does actually fix all of that, basically. The performance is very consistent in this game, and it has the added 3D effect enabled by the 3DS. And it looks really great. The added depth to the backgrounds and stuff like that just looks really awesome. And in my opinion, this is the definitive way to play Kirby's Adventure, if you can get access to it, because it's been delisted from the eShop. Because the 3DS eShop did shut down, which makes, I don't know, maybe 5 of these games totally inaccessible. Real shame about that. Nonetheless, though, that is, my favorite version of Kirby's Adventure. It retains the charm of the NES version while tightening up any technical issues.
Kirby Mass Attack.
Kirby Mass Attack was the final Kirby game released for the Nintendo DS system. It's a spin-off game which utilizes the touchscreen, and in it you control 10 different Kirbys. By golly, it's quite a treat, actually. The gameplay here is consistently pretty inventive and just plain fun. Kind of a weird one, but it has its own unique identity, and I appreciate it for that. Same composer as Kirby Air Ride and some other games, Shogo Sakai, so it has a really great soundtrack with some remixes actually from Air Ride. And in terms of the extra content, Kirby Mass Attack kind of goes all out. There's a ton of different extra mini games that you unlock, some of which have a fair amount of depth, like the pinball mode is really cool. There's an RPG mode. It's good stuff, man. Just a great time.
Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn.
This is a 3DS port of Kirby's Epic Yarn with some extra content. The extra content overall is pretty good, and I enjoy it. It adds a devilish mode where you have health and there's a devil that shows up. Unfortunately, this does come with the caveat that the music is always interrupted whenever the goddamn devil shows up, and it's like, okay, maybe we should be able to disable that because that gets kind of annoying. They also add the Ravel abilities, which are kind of like copy abilities, but they're sort of based on yarn adjacent things. They do make the game a lot easier, but Kirby's Epic Yarn is already really easy, so it doesn't actually make that much of a difference to me. It does make it maybe feel a little less focused than that original title. There's also some new mini games, one with King Dedede, one with Meta Knight, some new furniture. I believe you can also street pass your customizable apartment. That's a fun new addition.
Kirby's Epic Yarn.
So this is one place higher than Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, largely just because it's, I would say, the definitive version of that game. It has a higher resolution, as well as co-op play. The pointer controls for some sections, like the train section, work better than how they did it on 3DS. The 3DS version didn't have any 3D in it, which was kind of annoying. I think that would have been a nice touch to have that included. So I would say if you're looking to play Kirby's Epic Yarn, the Wii original is probably the way to go in general, although Extra Epic Yarn is certainly fine as well.
Kirby Air Ride.
Kirby Air Ride is truly special, the only Kirby game released for the GameCube. The last game, directed by Masahiro Sakurai, until his glorious return for Kirby Air Riders. I mean, presumably, I'm hoping that game's going to be good. Looking forward to that. I will say, if this game did not include City Trial, it would probably be a lot further down on the list. I like the main racing mode of Kirby Air Ride, but if I'm being honest, it's not the most amazing thing. In concept, it's good. The idea of having a racing game where you only really have to press one button is admirable. The execution, though, feels a little too loose. The game feel of races isn't the most exceptional. I would definitely rather play other racing games on the platform, like Mario Kart Double Dash in general. Top Ride as well is good, but suffers from a similar problem of just being slightly too simplistic. I do like the item variety in that mode. You get some crazy stuff happening. You know, there's quite a lot of content as well, a lot of unlockable vehicles. The addition of the checklist is really nice. I really like having all those different achievements to collect. Makes it quite fun. But yeah, especially in single player, those two modes are just kind of, they're fine, but not amazing. What really elevates it, though, is City Trial. I think City Trial is what this game is most well remembered for, and for good reason. It's by far the best part of the game. In it, you go around a city collecting different power-ups for your machine, which increase your stats, and lots of crazy different events can happen. At the end, there's an event where each of the 4 players face off, whether that be a race or a battle, something like that, or even a boss battle against King DDD. That shows up. I've never beaten that goddamn bastard. He's so freaking difficult in this game. It's kind of ridiculous. But anyway, this is essentially, to me, an infinitely replayable mode. It's definitely better in multiplayer, but it's actually quite good in single player as well. Just lots of different scenarios to experience and things to collect. You have the legendary air ride machines. Those are always fun to look for the pieces. City Trial is essentially why this title places so high. Just one of the most fun multiplayer modes ever, in my opinion. It's great. Hopefully it returns in Kirby Air Riders. I can't imagine it not. Sakurai even brought back this concept for Smash Run on Smash 3DS, which is definitely one of the most fun Smash Brothers modes. Seeing that continued would be great. That would be freaking sweet.
Kirby's Dream Collection Special Edition.
This is kind of a weird one to include because it's essentially just a compilation of several other titles, but I'll just sort of look at it as an overall package and not worry about it too much. So figuring out exactly where to put this is kind of tricky. It mostly just contains other games. Even still, I think a lot has been done to elevate it. For one, the game selection here is great. It's essentially all the main series Kirby games from the 90s up till Kirby 64, which is, you know, those are classics. Super awesome to have that all available in one package. But then the extra stuff that's included is also really great. There's challenge levels based on the ones in Kirby's Return to Dreamland in that same engine. And those are super fun, actually really difficult. Getting platinum on those was a massive challenge. So that's quite a bit of content just thrown in there just as a bonus. And then there's a whole museum which goes through the timeline of all the Kirby games and media up until that point, and even includes some episodes of the anime. That's fun. And then there's 3D versions of the different boxes, which spin around. Cool stuff. And then there's a really great booklet that comes with it, which has all this different historical information about the Kirby series. You get a music disc as well. This released for $40, which was pretty crazy. So this was below the going rate of premium titles at the time, even though it probably in an objective sense is a better value than a lot of other Wii games in terms of, you know, getting all the classic games and then quite a hefty amount of new content, even some physical items like the booklet and the discs. So yeah, I'm just putting it high because it just feels right. I think this is a really monumentous celebration of the Kirby series in like probably the top 3 Nintendo compilations that they've done. It's really great.
Kirby and the Rainbow Curse.
Kirby and the Rainbow Curse is one of the few times HAL Laboratory has gone back and made a sequel to another spin-off Kirby game. I guess they're doing that again. Actually, that's not HAL Laboratory, that's Bandai Namco. Okay. Yeah, so it has the same base gameplay where you control a ball version of Kirby using the touchscreen and drawing lines for him to roll across. What really elevates it, though, is the visual style employed here. It is designed to look like claymation style stop motion. They do some cool stuff with the frame rate, and it's really one of the best looking Wii U games. It still holds up really well even today. I hope perhaps this can get re-released at some point. Potentially tricky to do, but you know, it would be great to see this again. But I think the core gameplay is quite a lot more fun than Kirby Canvas Curse. It doesn't have abilities, but I think that's fine because there's a lot of other stuff going on that makes up for that for me. And this has one of the best Kirby soundtracks. The extra content in general in this game is really tremendous. You get a bunch of 3D models that you can look at in this little art studio, which is just such a nice thing to include as a model viewer. Then you have all these unlockable music tracks which remix different music from across the series. Some of the definitive versions of those tracks were created for this game. Yeah, I love the musical style used throughout this title. And there's also some challenge stages which are really, really goddamn difficult, but still quite fun. It also has co-op. This game really does have quite a lot going on for a Kirby spin-off. I think it's one of the most content-rich that they've ever made and really stands on its own in terms of visual style. Yeah, this is quite an innovative title. The main issue would probably be that you are going to be looking at the Wii U gamepad most of the time while playing, which is a 480p screen. It doesn't really showcase the true glory of how amazing this game looks. You kind of have to glance up at the TV from time to time to get the full effect. Even with that not insignificant flaw, this is still one of my favorites. It's quite grand indeed.
Kirby Superstar.
Kirby Superstar really paved the way for the modern Kirby formula in a lot of ways. In some ways, it's quite unique in that it has these multiple games within a game structure where you have this pin board and you select different modes to go to, many of which have somewhat different mechanics. You have stuff like the Great Cave Offensive. You're exploring more lengthy stages which are interconnected and searching for treasure. There's Dynablade, which is level-based, Spring Breeze, which is a sort of a remake of Kirby's Dream Land for the SNES. Milky Way Wishes, you collect the power-ups through these pedestals and then you unlock them and can select them. So there's quite a lot going on there. There's also the sub-games like Samurai Kirby and Megaton Punch. So there's tons of all that stuff, but what really makes it special is the core gameplay. This game innovated on the diversity of the copy abilities and their utility. Most of the abilities in this game are given multiple moves and different button combinations that you can do, which makes them a lot more fun to use and experiment with. A lot of great new additions like Yo-Yo, Mirror, all that stuff is tremendous, as well as the addition of co-op with the helpers. So you can have a variety of different characters join Kirby on his adventure and help out, as the name implies. This really was a defining title in the series and had to be included quite high up, as it is.
Kirby Triple Deluxe.
Kirby Triple Deluxe, the first 3DS Kirby title. In many ways, it's quite similar to Kirby's Return to Dreamland in structure, but it does differentiate itself. It has a bit of a fantasy theme, some fun level environments, like one that's based on candy. They've got a circus level with the circus ability. You have the addition of Hypernova, which leads to some fun puzzles, introduces a fun, powerful new ability for Kirby, which has some great set pieces. Of these modern Kirby titles, it has a good use of the 3DS's 3D effect, and you can go into the background or the foreground using these stars, a la Donkey Kong Country Returns. It needed to be here.
Kirby Planet Robobot.
Planet Robobot's main innovation over Triple Deluxe is the introduction of the Robobot armor. This introduces a lot of versatility. Each of the abilities that it works with have movesets for the Robobot. Adds a lot of variety to the moveset, and it's powerful while not feeling overpowered. I think a lot of people like this because of the sci-fi theming. I do as well. It doesn't push it over the edge into being my favorite title, which I've heard many other people say this is their favorite title in the series. which is fair, but for me, it's just another truly great one. Very near the top, but not quite there. The music takes a more electronic feel. It stands out among the series, as well as a really great finale segment, which is a series high point.
Kirby Superstar Ultra.
Bit of a strange placement having it here, perhaps, but that's the way it is. Kirby Superstar Ultra, to me, is essentially just Kirby Superstar, but a lot better. It feels more polished to me in terms of the user interface and overall flow of the gameplay. Honestly, there's just a lot of new content which elevates the experience. I think the sprite work as well is quite improved over Kirby Superstar, which definitely looks great, but I think looks slightly primitive when directly compared to Superstar Ultra. I think having it on the DS is a better fit, really great for pick up and go play. It does include the multiplayer, although it is a little bit more difficult to set up as you do need 2 copies of the game, although there is a download play mode for, I think, just Spring Breeze and maybe some of the sub-games. This was the first Kirby game I properly owned. It holds a special place in my heart. Basically everything I said about Kirby Superstar holds true for this one, just that I enjoy Superstar Ultra slightly more, hence it being higher on the list. You gotta love the Heavy Lobster music track that was added. One of the best Kirby music tracks ever introduced in this title. That's one definite improvement, I would say.
Kirby's Return to Dreamland.
Kirby's Return to Dreamland has the same overall structure as Planet Robobot Triple Deluxe, which all originates essentially from Kirby's Adventure. To me, this just is quintessential Kirby, which is why it places so high on the list. I also really enjoy the multiplayer, being able to play as Kirby or King Dedede, Bandana Waddle Dee, Meta Knight. I feel like this is the game where Bandana Waddle Dee really became a main part of the Kirby cast. Love the story elements, Magolor especially. Magolor is one of my favorite Kirby characters introduced in this title. All the different and extra modes are really great. I like Scope Shot. I have tons of hours logged in this. I've played through it multiple times. It's kind of just the pinnacle of classic Kirby to me, 2D Kirby.
Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe.
So why is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe higher than the original Kirby's Return to Dreamland, you may be asking? That is simply because Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is essentially a better version of Kirby's Return to Dreamland in almost all aspects. It has a new visual style with these cool borders around all of the characters. Very freaking awesome, actually. Overall, the game just looks really great. It runs at 60 frames per second. That's a plus, looking at you, Kirby Star Allies. And this version has quite a lot of new content. You have a new Magolor epilogue, which is really great. One of the better Kirby campaigns, and it's just a bonus that they put in this version that they did not need to, but they did. Because HAL Laboratory really, more often than not, just goes the extra mile. Is great. Then you also have the Merry Magoland mode, which has 10 different sub-games. Quite fun. Some of them returning, some of them new. We don't have Scope Shot. Rest in peace, Scope Shot. That's one thing that the original Kirby's Return to Dreamland will always have over Deluxe, is that it includes that sub-game, which was cut. Other than that, though, the content is all returning. And then apart from those additions, you also have some other ones like new copy abilities. You got Sand and Mecha. Both of those are really fun, actually. It's nice that they threw them in there. That's like what all this game is that original classic, but they threw in some new things as well, just for the sake of it. That's why it's number 2.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land.
This is the first full 3D Kirby game. They knocked it out of the park. You'd probably assume that they'd been making 3D games for multiple decades if this was your first Kirby game, just because it's really well polished and refined. I love the unique setting. It's in a sort of post-apocalyptic setting, which sounds crazy but works so well. You have the new mouthful modes, which add a ton of gameplay variety and are just frankly amusing. The boss battles are some of the series' best. They added a freaking dodge roll to Kirby and it works shockingly well. It's just a ton of fun. The ability selection is really good, less than some of the 2D games, but they compensate by that by having them be upgradable. I love the hub area. The sub games included are also really fun. I like the ball rolling game, and fishing is always a great time. Musically, it's tremendous. One of the best Kirby soundtracks, and the lyrical track included is sublime. I love the opening cutscene. It feels like a movie opening or something. It's so well made. Yeah, and with that, the story itself is quite good. Really weird lore implications. Definitely not what I would have expected from a new entry in the Kirby series. It really takes you by surprise in quite a few aspects. And I am fascinated to see what happens with the new Nintendo Switch 2 version that has been announced, featuring a new mode entitled Star-Crossed Worlds, which basically looks like they're taking what looks to be essentially every level in the game and remixing it with these new star elements that have shown up. So that looks really great, and that's not even mentioning the fact that this new version runs at 60 frames per second at 1440p, which is crazy. The original Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a technically really great game, but having 60 frames per second I think is gonna take it to the next level, man. If I had to anticipate, I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land Nintendo Switch 2 edition would likely take the #1 slot if we're counting that as a separate game when that comes out. Granted, that's not set in stone. I haven't played the game yet, but based on what I've seen, that is what it looks to be. Apart from that new version though, just not even taking that into account, this is my favorite Kirby game. Not by a lot. I mean, these top like 10 or so games are actually quite close in terms of my estimation. No one game is super far ahead of the others, and that's essentially true for the whole ranking list. I enjoy all of these games. Forgotten Land, though, does take the crown. The collectibles included are also really great. I love collecting the figurines. I actually have a few IRL versions. I think this really just takes the Kirby series to new heights. It arrived at a time in my life where there was struggle, there was difficulty. I'd just gone through with a surgery and was, recovering from that. It was quite a mood boost to get this coming out. I am so excited to see a true follow-up. We of course do have this Forgotten Land expanded version coming out soon, but I also hope that alongside that, HAL Laboratory is developing an all-new title. Hopefully 3D. I think there's the most potential for growth in 3D. I would not turn my nose up at a 2D title as well. Either way though, that is my Kirby ranking for the years 1992 to April of 2025. What a tremendous series this is. This YouTube channel really exists because of Kirby, because I want to talk about Kirby. The fact that I can make a ranking with this many games, all of which I enjoy, is pretty crazy. I couldn't say that about too many other game series. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this quite lengthy Onion Creature video. You've been a tremendous audience.
Thank you for coming to my presentation. It has been a delight.
Bye. Here's to 33 more years.